Fluent Fables. Learn English with story.
The rain on the moors of northern England wasn't just water, it was a character. A tenacious, cold-fingered presence that had been trying to erase the world since dusk. Detective Gus Cross stood beside the crumpled remains of a silver Bentley, its headlights illuminating a scene that defied logic. The car, a testament to obscene wealth, was a grotesque metal sculpture, its front end wrapped around a centuries-old oak tree. But that wasn't the hook. The hook was the body. It wasn't inside the car, nor was it thrown clear. It was perched impossibly on a high branch of the oak, as if a great unseen hand had placed it there. The man was impeccably dressed in a bespoke suit, and a single vibrant crimson orchid was pinned to his lapel, a bizarre splash of life against the muted grays of the sky and the bleak greens of the moor. Gus, a man whose face seemed permanently etched with the weariness of 1,000 solved cases, felt a prickle of unease that had nothing to do with the wind. The victim was Sir Alistair Finch, a reclusive billionaire known for his extensive botanical collection and his notorious disdain for human contact. A man who, by all accounts, never left his fortified estate, Blackwood Manor. Gus's partner, a young, incisive detective named Lena Thorne, was already circling the scene like a hawk. She was new to the unit, but her mind was as sharp as a scalpel. "The ME's preliminary guess is a fall from a height," she said, her voice cutting through the wind. "But there are no broken branches leading up to where he is, and the car's speed wasn't enough to launch him like this." Gus squinted up at the body. "And the orchid? That's not a common flower, is it?" "It's a rare Paphiopedilum, a slipper orchid," Lena replied without missing a beat. "I looked it up. It's part of the collection at Blackwood Manor, supposedly a gift from his late wife. He was fastidious about them, never let anyone near the greenhouse." The situation was already riddled with contradictions. Why was Finch out here, miles from his estate, in a storm? Why was his body so strangely placed? And what was the significance of the orchid? Gus felt the familiar thrum of a great puzzle taking shape. A silent language was being spoken, not in words, but in objects and placement. The crimson orchid wasn't just a flower, it was a signature, a mocking flourish left by a killer. Suddenly a flicker of light caught Gus's eye from the hollow of the tree. He knelt, pushing aside the rain-slicked ferns, and found it. A small, intricately carved wooden bird, no bigger than his thumb. It was a common finch. It was so inconspicuous that anyone else would have missed it. Gus pocketed it, his mind reeling. The crimson orchid, the finch? Was this a macabre game of clues? He was already 3 steps behind. The moor seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next move in a game only the killer understood. The scent of damp earth and decay gave way to a sterile, humid air as Gus and Lena approached Blackwood Manor's greenhouses. Sir Alistair's estate was a fortress of a different kind. Not stone walls, but glass. A vast, sprawling labyrinth of interconnected conservatories where the temperature was always 80 degrees and the air thick with the scent of exotic blooms. Finch's obsession was not just a hobby, it was his sanctuary. Gus, still mulling over the wooden finch he had found, felt a growing sense of unease. The manor was eerily quiet, staffed by a small, silent crew who moved with a kind of resigned efficiency. The head groundskeeper, a stoic old man named Elias, met them at the entrance to the main conservatory. His face was a map of wrinkles, each one a testament to years spent tending to the finicky needs of rare plants. He spoke with a clipped, dismissive tone. Sir Alistair was a man of habits. Inured to solitude, he would spend hours in here, sometimes days, just observing. He wouldn't let anyone touch the Paphiopedilum collection. Said they had souls. Lena's brows furrowed. Was anyone else here last night? Any guests? No one, Elias said, his gaze fixed on a cluster of ferns. It was his night to be alone. He had a set routine. He would check the moisture levels, the light, the nutrient balance. He was scrupulous. Gus's eyes scanned the interior, taking in the intricate network of pipes, misters, and thermometers. It was a perfectly controlled ecosystem, but as he looked closer, he saw something out of place. Tucked behind a large leaf of a Monstera deliciosa was a single, tiny, empty phial. It was the kind used for administering injections. Gus, with his long experience in forensic psychology, recognized the telltale signs of a person who knew their way around a kill. The plot thickened when Lena, using her sharper eyes, spotted a faint disturbance in the otherwise pristine soil near the Paphiopedilum display. It looked as though a small, heavy object had been dragged, leaving a barely perceptible trail. Following the mark, she led Gus to a hidden, locked cabinet beneath a workbench. The lock was a new one, and it had been forced open. Inside were ledgers, meticulously kept, detailing the lineage and care of every plant. But one page, and only one, was torn out. "This is not a robbery," Lena whispered. "Nothing's missing except for these records." Gus looked at the precise, careful handwriting in the ledger. This was a man who eschewed chaos, who valued order above all else. The torn page was a violent act, a deliberate defacement of his life's work. The orchid on Finch's lapel was not a sign of respect, it was a desecration. The killer wasn't just after Finch's life, they were after his legacy. The wooden finch he'd found now seemed less like a simple clue and more like a cruel taunt. The killer was playing a game of symbolism, a game with rules only they understood. Gus felt the air grow heavy with the weight of this new revelation. He and Lena were no longer just solving a murder, they were trying to decipher a coded message. The empty file and the torn ledger page were not just clues, they were a roadmap into a deep and deeply personal betrayal. Gus and Lena returned to the sterile world of the police station, but their minds were still trapped in the humid air of the greenhouse. They ran the file through forensics, but the results were a dead end. A common nutrient supplement for orchids. It was a perfect ruse, a perfunctory act to conceal a more sinister truth. Gus, with his gut full of unease, looked at the meticulously kept ledgers once more. "This isn't about money," he mused, tracing the elegant script. "It's about control. A man who obsesses over every millimeter of his plants' lives. His killer had to be someone who knew that. Someone close." Lena, who was using the station's computer to dig deeper into Sir Alistair's life, suddenly sat up straight. "I found something. Sir Alistair had an estranged son, Marcus. He changed his name 20 years ago and vanished. Public records show he's an environmental activist, a vocal opponent of land development and corporate greed. The Blackwood Manor property, it turns out, was set to be sold off in parcels for a massive housing development. Sir Alistair's will, which was recently updated, leaves the entire estate to a foundation that would oversee the project. Marcus gets nothing." The pieces began to click into place. A bitter son, enamored with nature, watching his father, a man who saw plants as possessions, destroy the land he cherished. The Crimson Orchid wasn't just a symbol of the victim's obsession, it was a mark of the killer's disdain. The finch was a taunt. They went looking for Marcus. His current location was off the grid, but his last known address was a small, dilapidated cottage on the outskirts of the moors. A place that blended so seamlessly with the landscape, it was almost ephemeral. They found him there. Not a killer in a tailored suit, but a man with calloused hands and a face weathered by the sun and wind. He was calm, almost unnervingly so, and his eyes held a profound sadness. "I haven't seen my father in years," Marcus said, his voice as quiet as the moor wind. He saw the world as something to be owned, to be tamed, not to be lived in. He tried to force that same will on me. When I left, he said I was a weed, a blight on his family tree. Gus watched him carefully. "The housing development? Did you know about it?" A flicker of rage crossed Marcus's face, quickly suppressed. "Of course. He was going to desecrate a part of the world I swore to protect. But I didn't kill him. I would never soil my hands with his blood. I had repudiated his world, not his life." His story had a ring of truth, but Gus was too experienced to trust it completely. The plot, however, took another, more unexpected turn when Lena's phone buzzed with an incoming text from the lab. The file they had sent in was just a nutrient supplement, but it had a peculiar microscopic residue. A type of moss spore, incredibly rare, and found only in one place in the world, the Blackwood Manor greenhouse. It was the only tangible link to the crime scene. "He lied," Lena said, her voice a low murmur. "He was at the greenhouse. The spore couldn't have come from anywhere else." Gus looked at Marcus, who hadn't changed his expression. "That's not what I find interesting," Gus said, his gaze fixed on a small clay pot near the fireplace. It was empty, but the earth inside was strangely disturbed. Sir Alistair's obsession was his orchids, not the land. The land was a means to an end, but the finch you found, Gus. It's a common bird, one that represents the very opposite of a rare cultivated orchid. It represents freedom, the wild. Lena's eyes widened. And a man who was once a finch, who was called a weed, maybe the murder wasn't about the land at all. Maybe it was about the orchid itself, the ultimate symbolic act. Gus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the moor's dampness. The killer was more subtle, more vengeful than they had ever imagined. They were so focused on the land, they had missed the true motive, the one hidden in plain sight, in the small, seemingly insignificant details of a wooden bird and an empty clay pot. Gus and Lena drove back to Blackwood Manor in silence, the rain finally subsiding into a fine, ethereal mist. The realization that they had been looking at the wrong motive was a humbling one. The torn ledger page, the empty file, the strange placement of the body, it was all a finely orchestrated piece of theater, a brilliant misdirection designed to point them toward Marcus. And they had almost fallen for it. The truth, Gus now suspected, lay not in the sprawling moors or the grand legacy, but in the intimate, fragile world of the orchids themselves. They found Elias, the groundskeeper, in the main conservatory, misting a cluster of delicate Phalaenopsis orchids. His movements were slow, deliberate, almost reverent. Gus watched him for a long moment before speaking. The moss on the file, it's a specific kind, Sphagnum capillifolium. It only grows in the soil around the Paphiopedilum orchids here. We found it at the cottage of Sir Alistair's son. He was the intended suspect, wasn't he? Elias didn't flinch. He continued to mist the flowers, his back to them. Sir Alistair was not a kind man. He saw his plants as a collection, not as living things. He would throw out entire specimens if they didn't meet his exacting standards. He was a tyrant in this glass kingdom. You planted the evidence, Elias, Lena said, her voice sharp. The file, the torn page, it was all to frame Marcus. You knew the boy had a motive. He was the perfect suspect. Elias turned, a slow smile spreading across his wrinkled face. Marcus? A sensitive boy, too much like his mother. He had no stomach for what needed to be done. He gestured to a small, unassuming echeveria on a nearby shelf. He was a weed in Sir Alistair's eyes, unworthy. And what about me? I have spent 50 years tending to these plants. I was the one who nurtured them, who understood their silent language. Sir Alistair only wanted them as trophies. He had no soul for them. Gus's mind went back to the crime scene. The body, perched in the tree like a macabre effigy. The crimson orchid pinned to his lapel. He had thought it was a symbol of disdain, but now he saw it for what it was. A statement. It was about the crimson orchid, wasn't it? Gus said, a cold certainty taking hold. The one you said was a gift from his late wife. Sir Alistair was planning to sell it. He was going to sell his most prized possession, the one with sentimental value, for profit. Elias's smile vanished, replaced by a look of sheer, unadulterated fury. He was going to sell her. That orchid, it wasn't just a plant. It was a promise, the last thing she ever gave him. He was going to sell it to an anonymous collector in Dubai for a fraction of what it was worth. It was an insult, a desecration of her memory. He had to be stopped. Gus walked toward a workbench, his eyes falling on a small, handheld device he had not noticed before. The file of nutrients was a red herring. It was just a way to bring you here. The real tool was this, wasn't it? He picked up a device with a thin, fine needle, the kind used by forensic botanists. This is a plant needle, used for grafting, but it can also be used to deliver a very precise dose of something else. Lisa's silence was his confession. The murder wasn't a brutal act of rage. It was a cold, calculated strike. He had found Sir Alistair at the car crash, injured but alive, and had used the needle to inject a tiny, fatal dose of a rare neurotoxin derived from a specific type of fungi. He then moved the body to the tree, a final, chilling symbolic act of poetic justice. He tried to kill the spirit of the Moor, Elias said, his voice a low hiss. He had to be returned to the earth, like a discarded seed. And the orchid, I placed it there for him to face his final judgment, the very thing he was going to betray, a witness to his demise. As Gus placed the handcuffs on the old man, a final stunning twist revealed itself. Elias's eyes, devoid of remorse, settled on Gus. You see, Detective, Sir Alistair didn't just have one son, he had two. I raised one of them, the one who has a talent for symbolism, a love for nature, and an old, ingrained hatred for his father. Gus looked at Lena, whose face was a mask of shock. The finch, the orchid, the perfect staging. It was all so symbolic, so intricate, and the only person he had met with such a deep-seated connection to the natural world was the man they had already met, Marcus. Elise hadn't planted the evidence to frame Marcus. He had planted it because he and Marcus were partners in this twisted, symbolic crime. The father who had been so intransigent in his life was now being judged by two sons, one born of blood, the other of loyalty and love for the very earth he despised. The Moor, which had been so silent, seemed to finally breathe a sigh of resolution. Learning Corner, vocabulary and grammar for advanced learners. Tenacious, not easily giving up or letting go. Persistent and determined. Example, the tenacious lawyer fought for years to prove his client's innocence. Incisive, having or showing a very clear understanding of a situation or problem. Example, her incisive analysis of the political situation impressed everyone in the room. Fastidious, very attentive to and concerned about accuracy and detail. Meticulous. Example, he was fastidious about keeping his workspace organized, with every tool in its place. Perfunctory, carried out with a minimum of effort or reflection, done as a duty or obligation. Example, he gave a perfunctory nod of thanks before leaving the meeting. Enamored, filled with a feeling of love or admiration. Example, she was completely enamored with the city's vibrant art scene. Ephemeral, lasting for a very short time. Fleeting. Example, the beauty of a sunset is an ephemeral moment that we should cherish. Repudiated, refused to accept or be associated with. Example, the political party repudiated the actions of its former leader. Echeveria, a type of succulent plant, typically with fleshy rosettes of leaves. Example, the windowsill was lined with various succulents, including a beautiful blue-green echeveria. Intransigent, unwilling or refusing to change one's views or agree about something. Stubborn. Example, the two parties remained intransigent on the issue, making a compromise impossible. Advanced grammatical structure. Appositive phrases. An appositive is a noun or noun phrase that renames or gives more information about a noun right beside it. Appositive phrases are non-essential and are set off by commas. They add detail and complexity to sentences, allowing for more descriptive and nuanced writing. Example from the story. The car, a testament to obscene wealth, was a grotesque metal sculpture, its front end wrapped around a centuries-old oak tree. Explanation. The phrase, a testament to obscene wealth, is an appositive that renames the car. It provides extra information about the car's nature, being a symbol of great wealth, without needing to start a new sentence. This structure makes the writing more fluid and sophisticated. And that brings us to the end of our journey into the Crimson Orchid. I hope you enjoyed unearthing the truth alongside Detective Gus Cross and Lena Thorne. The world of language, much like this mystery, is full of unexpected connections and deeper meanings. What did you think of the story? Was the final twist what you expected? Please share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. I love reading your insights. If you're eager for more advanced stories and linguistic challenges, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Give this video a like and explore our other fables. There's a whole library of mysteries, thrillers, and adventures waiting for you. Until next time, keep your curiosity sharp and your language skills even sharper. Thanks for listening.